Hey guys, Miss Zepho here to bring you the rest of Hamlet. So I encourage you to have your study guide with you and your book as we just carry on like we would in class, going through the last part of Hamlet. So picking up with question 3, it's Act 5, Scene 2, question 3. We haven't met Oscric before. He's a new character. If you went to the movie last night, you saw Oscric performed by a woman who was a guard, and she performed actually several roles of messenger and that sort of thing. Robin Williams played this part in the Kenneth Branagh film. Let's look at page 112 together, page 112. Oscric enters, and he's really there on message from the king. And right prior to this, Hamlet and Horatio have been talking about what all went down when Hamlet was at sea on the way bound for England, and what happened prior to him boarding the pirate ship. At the very end, on page 112 of that conversation, Hamlet says, "I am very sorry, good Horatio, that to Laertes I forgot myself. For by the image of my cause I see the portraiture of his." And so we understand that Hamlet understands why Laertes has a problem with him. They both are out for vengeance for their fathers. But about that time, Oscric enters, and Hamlet clearly does not care for him. He is almost now fulfilling that role that Polonius was, that sort of advisor to the king. And Hamlet makes a little bit of fun of him, telling him to take off his hat, put it back on, take it off, put it back on. They're arguing about the heat. Oscric is very hot and wants to take it off. Hamlet wants it to stay on his head. It's just, Hamlet is making fun of him. He doesn't care for this guy at all. Now on page 113, Oscric starts in on this long part about how great Laertes is, and Hamlet agrees and then says, "Why do we wrap the gentleman in our more rawer breath?" In other words, he's wondering why they're talking about Laertes. Why are they trying to come up with adequate words to describe him? And Oscric is made fun of a little bit by Horatio and Hamlet, but it's overall insignificant to where we're headed with this. On page 114, Oscric says that he wants to that there's a wager out. Who will beat whom in a fencing match? So after talking about that he's really good at fencing, Oscric gives message on page 114, "The king, sir, hath wagered with him 6 Barbary horses, against the which he has impawned, as I take it, 6 French rapiers and poniards, and their signs as girdle, hanger, and so. 3 of the carriages, in faith, are very delicate to fancy, very responsive to the hilts, most delicate carriages of very liberal conceit." And Hamlet asks, "What are you talking about? What are the carriages?" And essentially they're the hangers for the swords that you would wear. So all of these are the winnings to whomever wins this fencing match. Then he goes on to say, "The king, sir, hath laid, sir, that in a dozen passes between yourself and him, he shall not exceed you 3 hits. He hath laid on 9 for 12, and it would come to immediate trial if your lordship would vouchsafe the answer." In other words, as a loose paraphrase, Oscric is saying to Hamlet, the king wants you to have a fencing match with Laertes. He's offering lots of rewards if you win, and he's betting that you will win. So if they were to each, in a fencing match, it's, you try to tap the other person with the blunted tip of your sword. Every time you do that, you get sort of a point. So in 12 passes, he thinks that Hamlet will win 9 of the 3, and Laertes only hitting him 3 times. Does the king really think that Hamlet can win? Doesn't matter. We don't know for sure. But he's trying to encourage Hamlet to embrace this opportunity and go to this fencing match. They need him to because of the 3-part plan to kill Hamlet. But Hamlet feels a little bit insecure about going into a fencing match against a guy who wants revenge for his father's death. So he says, how if I answer no? Like, what happens if I don't agree to this? And Oscric says, I mean, my lord, the opposition of your person in trial. So now Hamlet is between a rock and a hard place, because the decision he has to make is either I agree to fence with Laertes, who probably wants me dead, and it's arranged by the king, who definitely wants me dead, or I can go to trial for the murder of Polonius, and he knows he would be hanged for it. They tried, to get him banished to England. That didn't work out so well. Let's move to page 115. A lord comes in who is just works for the king, probably, and wants to find out if Hamlet is going to agree to this or not. And Hamlet says, I'm ready whenever to do this. And then the Lord tells him, the queen desires you to use some gentle entertainment to Laertes before you fall to play. Looking in your margins, that means courtesy to Laertes. So the queen is discerning Laertes is angry with him. It might not be wise to start a war with him now. This little friendly fencing match might not go so well unless you soothe his feelings and kind of try to make things better with him before you fight. And Hamlet says, she will instructs me. Let's look at the bottom of 115 and top of 116, where Horatio says, you will lose this wager. He doesn't feel very good about them going into this at all. And Hamlet says, actually, I think I could win if it was just about fencing, because I've been in continual practice. But, he says, thou wouldest not think how ill all's here about my heart, but it's no matter. So, he thinks that skill alone he could win. But something in his heart feels not good about this at all. But Hamlet says it's but foolery. It's a kind of gain-giving as would perhaps trouble a woman. It's just women's intuition. I'm not going to pay that any attention. But Horatio says, if your mind dislike anything, obey it. I will forestall their repair hither and say you are not fit. But Hamlet says, no, we defy augury. There's a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. If it be now, 'tis not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, yet it will come. The readiness is all. So no man has aught of what he leaves. What is it to leave betimes? Let be. The way I interpret that is Hamlet is saying, maybe I do feel like this isn't going to go well, but the reality is it may be beyond my control. We don't always get to choose our fate. Que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. If it's meant to be, it's going to happen. If it's not meant to be, it's not going to happen. Ultimately, it's going to happen eventually. The only difference is how ready I am. And of course, he means death. He will die eventually, be it now or be it later. Maybe not is not the most important part. Then enter the king, queen, Laertes, lords, Oscric, the attendants. There's the swords called the foils, the gauntlets, a table with flagons of wine on it. So they're setting up for this fencing match. If I have not told you, because I've told some of my classes this, but I often see Groupons for Atlanta area fencing classes. If you and a friend wanted to maybe go in together and buy a 30-minute fencing package, I'm certain I could offer some extra credit in some way. Just a little fun way to experience Renaissance culture. As we move into this fencing scene, the king joins Hamlet and Laertes' hands, and this is where Hamlet takes his mom's advice and does semi-offer an apology to Laertes. He says, give me your pardon, sir, I've done you wrong, but pardon it as you're a gentleman. This presence knows, as you must needs have heard, how I'm punished with sore distraction. What I have done that might your nature, honor, and exception roughly awake, I here proclaim was madness. Was it Hamlet wronged Laertes? Never Hamlet. If Hamlet from himself be taken away, and when he's not himself does wrong Laertes, then Hamlet does it not. Hamlet denies it. Who does it then? His madness. If it be so, Hamlet is of the faction that is wronged. His madness is poor Hamlet's enemy. Sir, in this audience, let me let my disclaiming from a purposed evil free me so far in your most generous thoughts that I have shot mine arrow o'er the house and hurt my brother. So who is Hamlet blaming for the death of Polonius? Not himself, but his madness. So he's begging Laertes almost, forgive me, don't view it as I hurt you, I killed your father. View it as my mind was not with me. I was crazy. I didn't know what I was doing. So my madness killed your father, not me. And the allusion that the simile that he uses here, actually it's a metaphor, but he says, imagine that I have shot mine arrow o'er the house and hurt my brother. So think about if you were shooting a bow and arrow and you're on one side of a house and you try to just shoot it over the roof. You don't know what lies on the other side of the house. And so he's like, it's that. It's I shot blindly and I didn't know what it was going to hit. It's perfect because Hamlet did quite blindly stab through the curtain. He didn't know who was behind there. He accidentally killed Polonius, thinking, of course, that it was the king. Laertes says that he's satisfied in nature, but I'm not convinced. Maybe, if you would like, at the end of your packet where it asks you the crazy not crazy chart, you could add something here like I here proclaim was madness, or his madness is poor Hamlet's enemy, and he's talking in the third person, but he means his own madness was his enemy. So that might be a good thing to add there. We're working our way through the last page of guided notes. Number 8 is where we'll go next. As we continue looking at this fight, they're choosing their swords. Remember that Laertes is going to choose accidentally on purpose a sword that doesn't have the blunted tip. That's the foils. The foils are the fencing swords. As they're picking, they're basing it on the heaviness and whatever, and they prepare to play. Let's look at the bottom of 117. The king says, set me the stoups of wine upon that table. If Hamlet give the first or second hit, or quit in an answer of the third exchangement, let all the battlements their ordnance fire. The king shall drink to Hamlet's better breath, and in the cup an union shall he throw, richer than which 4 successive kings in Denmark's crown have won. Give me the cups, and let the kettle to the trumpet speak, the trumpet to the cannoneer without, the cannons to the heavens, the heaven to earth. Now the king drinks to Hamlet, come begin, and you the judges bear a wary eye. You remember the king was going to offer Hamlet some poisoned wine, and that would be like the third part of their scenario, the plan C for Hamlet's death. Well, here we see how that exactly would happen. He plans to offer Hamlet a drink of wine if Hamlet gets the first or the second hit on Laertes in the fencing match, or if he quits after the third. They're going to shoot the cannons, and it'll be a big celebration for Hamlet's winning. He says he'll place a union in the cup, and if you read your margin notations, that says a pearl. The union is here a pearl, and he says it's richer than what the past 4 kings have worn in Denmark's crown. So it's a very wealthy pearl. We can only guess, though, that pearl is actually the poison that he's going to drop in the cup, because the king takes a drink of wine and then sets it aside for Hamlet, and he's planning maybe to wait for that moment when it's right to hand Hamlet the cup and then drop that pearl poison in. As they play, you have to follow the stage directions in here or you'll miss the heavy action of it. But Hamlet does get the first hit, and the king offers him drink and says, this pearl is thine, give him the cup. So the cup is poisoned wine at this point, but Hamlet says, I'll play this bout first. Why would he want to have a sip of wine now when he needs his reflexes at their best? He doesn't need his senses dulled, the common effects of wine, so he decides to wait. The trumpets are shot, and a cannon. That could be 2 different things. There could be cannon fire outside because you're about to see that an army is invading the castle. Or is it that the trumpet sounded because Hamlet won this bout? So we'll have to follow it a little further to see. They play some more, and Hamlet gets the second hit. And the king says, "Our son shall win," and watch the queen. "He's fat and scant of breath." He means unfit and short of breath. "Here, Hamlet, take my napkin, rub thy brows. The queen carouses to thy fortune, Hamlet," and that means drinks. So the queen takes that cup as if she's going to give it to Hamlet. But Hamlet doesn't want to drink just yet, so she's going to drink to him, like cheers to you. Imagine this moment for the king, though. He cannot very well say, "No, Gertrude, that's poison meant for Hamlet." You see what I'm saying? So how will he keep her from it without revealing his intentions? He simply says, "Gertrude, do not drink." Did he scream it? I don't know. There's no exclamation mark. He just maybe calmly tries to say, "That's not for you. That's for Hamlet." But he says in an aside, meaning, just to himself or for the benefit of the audience, "It is the poisoned cup. It is too late." Imagine the epiphany of the moment, knowing the poison wine you intended for someone else is going to your wife. And Laertes says to the king, "My lord, I'll hit him now," like stab him through with that unblunted sword, or at least cut him with that poisoned tip. And the king says, "I do not think it." Like he's seeing his own plan unravel before his eyes. How could it possibly end well? And Laertes says, as his own aside, "And yet it is almost against my conscience." Like he's starting to feel bad about it. Maybe because he recognizes that Hamlet did kill his father by accident. Maybe he recognizes how ugly this is all about to get. Maybe he still has genuine feelings for his friend Hamlet and the feelings that Ophelia had for Hamlet. Or maybe he really is receiving the forgiveness that Hamlet offered him. As Hamlet offers a bit of just jabbing, like, "I fear you're just playing with me, like, give me your best shot," Laertes plays some more, and watch the stage directions here. Laertes wounds Hamlet with the poisoned sword. It's over. But in the scuffling, they change rapiers. So the very swords, the foils that they were fighting with, they switch. Not like, "Hey, it's my turn to play with your sword and you play with mine." I'm sure in all the chaos, one of them ends up dropping it, the other one grabs whatever's handy. It's a very dramatic scene. And in the exchange, Hamlet wounds Laertes. So now Laertes has that moment of epiphany. I've just been cut by the poisoned sword that was meant for Hamlet. So they're both wounded. But based on how quickly they die, one can only assume that Laertes was hurt worse. And it's interesting, maybe I'll get a chance to show you one movie take on it, how that happens. Before either of them die, though, it says the queen falls, and Horatio says that they bleed on both sides, meaning Hamlet and Laertes. And then Laertes says, "Oscric, I am justly killed with mine own treachery." And about this time, Hamlet is observing the queen passing out. The king tries to pass it off. She swoons to see them bleed, like she's just faint because of all the blood. But she says, "No, no, the drink, oh my dear Hamlet, the drink, I am poisoned." Imagine her epiphany when she can feel that she's been poisoned, and she knows she has maybe just seconds or minutes to live. But recognizing she married a murderer. All that Hamlet said of him about the killing of her first husband is true. And worse, he planned to kill her son as well, right there in front of her very eyes. She knows the drink was intended for him, and she dies.